And welcome back to LinkedIn Logs, the Jobs Podcast. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the Jobs Podcast for the website, cpluscomedy.com. This is LinkedIn Logs, episode 88. Here we are. If you're watching the video, if you're watching a live stream, you did see me jump because after I clapped to the signal to initiate in the edit where I will sync up the audio and the video, I had a dog walk over to me and sniff my elbow. And it scared the living daylights out of me. What's your favorite James Bond movie? Is it Living Daylights? Is it Goldeneye? Is it the one where that was a blaxploitation film? Is it Die Another Day? I can only think of Pierce Brosnan movies. Is it one of the new ones? Spectre. No Time to Die. Casino Royale. Welcome back in. Here we are. We're doing an episode. Here's a little update. Here's an update. It's the same news I had. A couple of weeks ago, I had an interview with a redacted network for a producerial position. And I had no news after the really good interview. I had an enjoyable interview, so I had no news after that. I received it was through a recruiter. I don't like working with recruiters, but this is well, hold on, we'll see what happens in the end. But it's a lot more positive than other past recruiter experiences. Anyway, I had the recruiter reach back out and said, "Hey, they want to meet with you again." I said, "Great." And then the recruiter said, "I'll talk to you in a couple of days to see where I'm." Like, Jesus, come on. The reason why there's a big hold off is because, and I was told this ahead of time, even during the interview itself, or at the end of the interview. We're not looking until mid or end October. And I said, okay. And then I just had to stay cool. I have long story short, there's a second interview, I guess. I'm calling it a meeting. I don't know if it's going to be another interview. Because I'm sure they have other candidates. But you better fucking believe I'm the best one, goddammit. The most desperate one, at least. So that will happen on Friday afternoon. And I hope to come back with good news. I hope they just go, all right, let's do it. Because, there was a period of time early on in my career. I'm now in the middle of it. Maybe I'm at the end. Maybe I die tomorrow. Who knows? Oh, God, I was going to take care of these animals. But there was a time in my career where I could just go to an interview and then get hired immediately. But now that's not happening. That's all the news I have about that. So hopefully I hear something back. Because let me tell you what my big plan is today after this. I'm going to go through all of my Strava. I've already downloaded. Oh, hold on. Yeah, I've already downloaded the CSV for Peloton, all of my workouts, and I've downloaded the CSV for my Garmin account. And I'm going to put in all the data that has not been put in on Strava. So I'm going through, for cycling to the very least, because I want to get all of 2024. The short of it is, I downloaded the Wahoo app so that I could get power output and all that stuff put onto Strava and the mileage and everything, because I have a DIY Peloton bike and the mileage is not counting towards my total on Strava. And so I'm just doing it all. I've got nothing else going on in my life. It's either that or watch TV and play video games. And I'm definitely not doing that. That's why I spent 4 hours working out today. Fact. And the bulk of it came from cycling. The bulk of, and yeah. It was like an hour 42 at the gym and then 81 minutes cycling. And then the in between time was me driving home from the gym and taking Maverick out and feeding the pets in total. Okay, let's get into the news. All right, he's in his crate. This comes from the rap written by, oh shoot, hold on, I have to pull up the Chrome. All right, this comes from the rap written by Corbin Bollies. NBC News' 100. Excuse me, what does that headline say? NBC News, 150 layoff gut. Okay. NBC News is 150 layoffs gut Black, Latino, Asian American, and LGBTQ plus diversity teams. We're still in this phase of not just the entertainment industry, but all industries experiencing layoffs. And it seems easier for these, now leaning back into the entertainment industry, these media companies to lay off the teams that seemingly can be or are easily be exposed that are explosive. NBC News eliminated these teams. These essentially what they are diversity teams last Wednesday. As you know, NBC Universal is spinning off a bunch of networks, including MSNBC. So again, if you don't know, Versant is the new arm of all the cable networks, essentially, and as well as MSNBC, which would now be Miss Now, and then Peacock, as well as NBC Universal will be with everything else. It's just what Warner's doing. And NBC is also doing it, or NBC Universal is doing it as well. Both companies are taking the most successful parts of the company, the streaming, the movie studios, and they're taking the least successful at this point in time, the cable, and everything else, and throwing it off to survive on its own. Verticals include NBC Black, BLK, NBC Asian America, NBC Latino, and NBC Out. They're not going to have dedicated teams. They're going to help with their coverage. So that means basically any story essentially from NBC News that can be that can be categorized under any of those verticals will take those spots, but they're never just going to have a dedicated correspondent to the Asian American or the Latino or the Black or the queer sections anymore. They're going to continue publishing those stories to those specific groups. They may retain up to 5 staffers who will contribute coverage, the Boilies writes, on the verticals in the newsroom, according to one source, as the dedicated teams focus exclusively on those verticals are sunset. That's about 7% of NBC News' newsroom, of a total of 2,000 staffers, and 2% of the wider NBCU news group, which includes Telemundo and the network's owned and operated local news stations. I wonder if a lot of those people were freelance or contract or salaried. And I mean, in any case, if they were freelance or contract, that doesn't make it any better. But I hope, with this freeing up of funds, this could lead to more people getting freelance opportunities with the organization. I doubt this was going to happen. And I'm just trying to put a positive spin on this, but yeah. It reflects, as Boilies writes, I forgot this guy's name, the changing nature of operating a large-scale newsroom amid a media environment facing declining ratings and a fragmented audience, with layoffs occurring across outlets including Washington Post, Rolling Stone, CNN, and PBS. Gannett also removed mentions of diversity from its website in April and said it would stop publishing demographic data on its website. Disney also rebranded its internal DEI efforts last week to opportunity and inclusion. And in some ways, this could be turned a little bit political because of, or steered in that direction because of the changing diversity efforts of this current administration. Then there's also just looking at what is the easiest thing for these companies to gut? And unfortunately, that would be the diversity sections. Would that? But is that the easy thing to do? Is that something that will save money in the long run? I don't know. All right, let's move on to the next story. This comes from NPR. Brittany Melton writes, a book vending machine provides an outlet for DC area authors after funding cuts. Self-publishing a book is, you know what? I'm, as somebody who has made money from being a narrator for Audible, it is seemingly very easy for these people to just publish a book and put it out and have no second thoughts to it. But self-publishing a book, if you do it right, can be a very rewarding thing. And sometimes, books can blow up from that. It's harder to get noticed, especially in today's climate of everybody can do anything and nothing means anything. Anything means nothing. Nothing means anything when you do it online. But this vending machine called the Lit Box is filled with local authors, and anybody can go up to this vending machine and buy a book that sounds interesting to them and support somebody in their community. Lauren Woods launched the project in May after growing frustrated with what she saw as some publishers focus on sensationalism and the lack of bookstores focused on local authors in the area. I will say this, not to take away from Litbox, but you can go to bookstore.org. I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, if you go to bookshop.org, bookstore.org, redirected to it. So that's great. But if you go to bookshop.org, you can shop locally, think globally, but shop locally and support local independent bookstores. So I live next door. I live near Acapella Books here in Atlanta, Georgia. I could order from them. Let's see. I could do Destination Books, which is a pop-up. Okay. Virginia Highland Books. Jesus Christ, all these pop-ups and provisionals. What is this? What are these? Anyway, 44th and 3rd bookseller. I could Bookish. I could support any one of these shops and pay full price for these, for books and everything. And on this website. And that's great. I think it's even more than full price. I'll tell you that much. But being an author it's also incredibly hard. As easy as it is to even let's just pretend you put out you've written 100,000 words for a book, which I've done. I did it in college and it was tough. And it was for a class. I still have the book and it sucks. I'll never touch it again. It stinks. It was. Here's a little bit about that book. It was. I tried to do something dramatic and it did not work. There we go. This is why I stick with comedy and business, and the business of comedy. What was I talking about? Anyway, but if you write 100,000 words and you put out the books, it can still be tough to get recognized. I for every book that I've auditioned for on Audible, oftentimes, I'm gonna tell you right now, I look for one of two things. If they have reviews, if the book has already been published and they have reviews, and there's a lot of reviews, then I'm going to audition for that book, as are 50 other people doing the same thing on Audible's platform. In the same way, on the other end, on the opposite side of the spectrum, if there's no reviews and it's somewhat of an interesting book, I will audition, especially if the author has previously published other books or they have another book that has a review, and if they're offering a decent amount of money. Inspired by a European book vending machine, she Woods, the woman Lauren Woods who set this up, set about planting one in the nation's capital to try to market books more equitably and see how they sell. The hyper-competitive publishing industry makes it challenging for some books to get in stores, and Woods wants those she still finds excellent to get to readers. It's hard because if you're not with Penguin Random House or Hatchet Book Group or HarperCollins or Macmillan or Simon and Schuster, which I believe two of those are under the same umbrella, it's tough to get your name out there. I even see it with just working comedians, or working artists, people who are trying to get a movie made or trying to sell a movie or anything. Remember when Kickstarter was a huge thing for getting movies made? Remember when Zach Braff went to Kickstarter, I believe, once or twice to make one of his movies? Even he's find it hard to get people to give him money. Oh, that's Zach Braff. The current administration's slashing of federal funding for the arts, which Woods calls incredibly disturbing, has impacted writers. She says, everyone is telling you that your words and your voice don't matter and that they're not worth putting money behind. And then that's no longer a priority. Hopefully this lit box deal can spread. I like this idea of people just being able to get a book right then and there. And I love books. Books are great. I've in the last couple of years, I've upped my reading, be it via physical book, via, I'm pointing to my iPad, via digital book, or via audiobook. They're taking books any way you can. And really, it's helped me get back into comic books. As much as I love to support a comic book shop, comic books are expensive. And also, I just want to read, the comic book and not have a thing. I have a collection of comic books that I've just kept because I love them so much. But other than that, I'm not going to spend $40 and then read it and then be done. Maybe after the fact. All right, let's move on to the next story. This comes from New York Times, written by Mike Isaac. What if SportsCenter and LinkedIn merged? There's a new name when it comes to what is CNBC considered? I guess job news coverage. From the minds of John Coogan and Jordy Hayes, two entrepreneurs. They host a show called Technology Business Programming Network. It's a live streaming show that lasts for 3 hours every day, and it's very similar to what you'll find again in the LinkedIn or the SportsCenter worlds. As Mike writes, the formula is simple. The two self-aware fellas who treat techno-capitalism like a fantasy football league, chronicling a ticker-tape dribble of executive moves, corporate acquisitions, initial public offerings, and venture capital funding. Call it SportsCenter for the terminally online MBA grad. In some ways, I when I was reading this story, and I try to read through stories ahead of time and not look like a fool, but when I was reading through this story, what these guys came off as, and I will be completely forthcoming about it. John Coogan and Jordy Hayes just seem like the typical white guys who appear on CNBC, who preach the gospel of Elon Musk and other white men along those lines. And quite frankly, reading this article, that's what they continue to be. However, I will say that after doing some digging and looking into this thing that started a year ago this month, they have a very hyper-focused and loyal fan base. It's very fascinating because again, I guess it's because I'm also interested in shit like this, but it's very interesting to see that what Mike and what others have pointed out is practically overnight. This is a sensation for at least the people that are into it. They call it, it's referred to as founder mode. This is so stupid. They even sat down with Mark Zuckerberg in the Menlo Park campus of Meta, and it's a very busy, still niche operation where these 20-something year old men, as Mike points out in this piece, they have 10 employees, and everybody working there is, with the exception of Coogan, who is 36, everyone there is under 30 years old. And they've managed to be kind of, as Mike points out here, a Mr. Beast-esque type deal. And they consider CNBC and Fox Business their competitors, which is, I think, on one hand, it makes sense to see yourselves in that position, because who else is really doing this? But on the other hand, I don't see Seth Meyers or Jimmy Kimmel as my competitors, because that's an insane thing to do and to say. But again, there's 10 of them. The audience is small but mighty, as I had to say. But Larry Ellison likes the show. Mark Cuban has been on the show. Uber founder Travis Kalanick has been on the show. Two of those guys I dislike. I like Mark Cuban. Startup founders consider it a required watch. Entire communications teams for executives for public companies strategize how to make their CEO's interview on TBPN feel like a good hang while promoting their business. I'm going to pop open this picture that comes from Mike. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I slid down for no reason. As you can look at the studio, I mean, they're based in Los Angeles, even though that all their fans are mostly in Silicon Valley. You see that there's a gong in the background over here. They have green screens everywhere. It's a business, and they've really created something with it. All the loudness that you expect, all the liken it to what's Jim Cramer's show, Mad Money. Although I would think that it has more decorum than that show. I dislike him and everything he does. Anyway, so they've had their time in Silicon Valley working. Oh, Jesus Christ! Coogan worked for Peter Thiel, of course. Again, everything screams about these guys. I do not like them. But for now, I'll say this before they reveal who they really are. I do respect what they've been able to do in a year. The set approximates a CNBC studio setup in the locker room of an Equinox gym. One recent morning, Mr. Hayes took off his pants while on the phone with a potential guest, changing out of his workout clothes and into a suit. A dozen young men scurried around the set, prepping for the show and chawing packets of Zyn. See, that gives me everything I need to know about this platform. It feels like Bloomberg because they have the ticker on the bottom. They've got their show drags on for 3 hours, but people are invested. They want to watch it. They want to be interviewed because this is just another thing for them to be seen on. If I was, somebody in business, I would, yes, also want to appear on the CNBCs and talk about the business there. But this is where you're going to find a new hyper online audience, and this is something that is important to see. And these are decisions that you need to make. It feels a lot like they do have HQ Trivia. It feels a lot like HQ Trivia. I remember that. Oh my goodness, yes. They talk about AI. They talk about startups. I predict, this will be, and this is an easy prediction to make, but this will be something that people will watch for as long as these guys want to do it and as big as it gets. I do want to caution though that because they have such a niche, genre. They need to be careful and not let it explode too far. and too wide, because if it gets to be too big, then they lose exactly what the original fans like. We've seen it with every online medium. You saw it with what did Warner Brothers just dissolve? Oh, Rooster Teeth. You saw it with Rooster Teeth. You saw it with other things. Other things. All right, let's get into the final story. This comes from The Hollywood Reporter. It's written by Eric Hayden. Where are extras finding work now? A Hollywood payroll firm has a good idea. If you don't know what extras are, or background artists, as they've been affectionately referred to in the past couple of years, there are people behind, who don't get lines. They're in the background of scenes, of shows, and they are paid. They're not paid well, but they are paid. You can get one of these jobs fairly easily, and you're going to be on set for 12 hours. And it's not good pay, and it is not the catapult to stardom, to anything really, that people think it is. That's what could have happened years ago, but that's definitely not what's happening now. So what happens with a show or a movie is typically a company will reach out, or you can apply. And for like very specifically, hey, we need background people for this movie, for this Will Smith movie, the only star I could think of, this Will Smith movie, or we have this TV show that we're making, and we need 100 people on this day or whatever. This company, many companies, not just one company. This company in particular that is being chronicled here by Eric Hayden at the Hollywood Reporter is called Everyset, and it launched in 2016 with a different name and then rebranded in 2022. And what they do is they have digital vouchers to manage workflow for extras on sets. And then eventually they started building a rapport with SAG and Hollywood studios. And then eventually they grew to about 50 or so employees and had clients that include Netflix and Amazon and HBO and Paramount and Skydance and Apple and this and that. They're a tech company, and they also have the casting software. But what's important about this is that because they are working with these other companies, studios. Jesus, stop calling them companies. Because they're working with these other studios, they're a payroll company with the W-2 processing space. So they know with the likes of Central Casting, because Central Casting is casting through them, and they're bankrolling this whole thing. They know where all of the extras are going to and coming from. In the past couple of years, like literally in the past year or two, basically essentially since the Hollywood strikes with SAG-AFTRA and the writer's strike and I believe the directors averted one. But with these strikes, we saw, and even prior to that, just a little bit prior to that, we saw a shift of studios leaving Los Angeles or unfortunately leaving Georgia and making their shows and movies overseas or in places that give better tax returns. California, which just raised its annual film and TV incentive cap to $750 million, trails just behind and runs almost even with New York. And again, you used to be able to have shows and movies shoot in these places, but now it's kind of evening out, and we're seeing just a decline. So we know where the actors are going. We know where the studios are going. We know where the actors are going. Sometimes they're going to different parts of the U.S. Sometimes it's just cheaper to shoot a show like The Floor is shot in Ireland or Scotland, I believe. It's just easier to shoot that show over there than it is to have here in America. Which I find just baffling to be able to, let's pretend that the set is being built there, and they're going to have at most the floor for one more season, just to build that set there and have it there, and then to fly out the hosts, to fly out the contestants, to fly out people who work on the show, producers and a director, and just PAs. Like, that's crazy to me. Anyway, where background actors are finding work. Job bookings for extras on film and TV shoots in major U.S. production hubs that have been processed by the payroll firm Every Set. As you can, you'll see on this, the figures from Every Set between 2023 and 2025, you saw essentially a double figure increase in places like Georgia, and then for countries, for states like California, for New Jersey and New York, you saw increases from just 4,000, 9,000, all the way up to 27,000, which is they're kind of, again, leveling out, and while jobs aren't necessarily always coming, they're still there. The CEO of Every Set says, now with tax incentives in New Jersey and New York, and with California coming back online, we're seeing the work come back in a dramatic fashion. We're seeing almost 30% month over month in job growth right now on the background performer side. Every Set processes about 15,000 background actor jobs a month across the country on features and TV projects. Whether that pace can keep up is an open question. There's a number of well-funded artificial intelligence startups that implicitly and ominously promise to do away with Hollywood sets as the industry knows them, and instead offer, say, cheap versions of AI-generated crowds with some prompts and post-production. I won't say that AI has not been used for crowd sizes before. You can probably point to, let's just say, the Dark Knight Rises. Is that the third Christopher Nolan movie? When I'm thinking particularly when they're playing football in that stadium, and then Bane comes. Yes, they probably only had 200 background extras to work with, and then they reused assets throughout the entire stadium. However, I don't think, at least in this point in time, because that would damage studios. God, what is the word I'm looking for? It would damage their reputations with actors and producers and such. But I wouldn't say that studios are going to be on the lookout. Well, they're probably on the lookout, but I wouldn't say that they're using that technology right now at this point. They're probably using AI as a tool in smaller ways, but again, to use it in replacement of people is something that is not happening at this point. I did see a story last night on the BBC. They did a whole I think it was Channel 4. I don't know what program it was, but it was BBC News, and they did a whole story about AI and being replaced. And then in the end, they revealed that the reporter was AI, and they said, we're not going to be doing this, but this is what could happen. The U.S. spending in 2025 when it comes to the movies and TV shows, we've seen a decrease again in California. We've seen a sizable decrease. In New York, we've seen a very big decrease. In Georgia, we've seen a more than sizable decrease. But in places like New Jersey, you've seen an increase because they're offering better incentives. New Mexico apparently is doing well only in movies that are over $10 million, and then they're lacking when it comes to everything else. New York is offering the most when it comes to incentives. Wow. Georgia leads the way with no maximum allotment of state dollars, with New York capping out at 800 million. But still, New York is ahead of California, and New Jersey's offering 430 million. Interesting. I'm worried about, extras are very important. I know it can be hard to wrangle extras. I've been an extra in a couple of things, but I was an extra, but let me finish my thought. It is difficult to take control of a lot of people like that, but extras can offer something that AI tools can't. And on there are moments when I'm watching something, and the producer in me is watching and paying attention to what's going on in the background. And oftentimes not oftentimes, but a lot of times I've caught this where there's an extra clearly looking at the camera, or they're paying attention to the actors, and they're not, or they're just not, background acting, and they're trying to get noticed. Not trying to get noticed, but they are being noticed. And then there's other times when I'm watching and I don't notice them at all, which is the point. Which is the point of something that you want when it comes to background extras. But they offer life in a way that artificial intelligence, I will say, at this point in time, definitely does not offer. They offer something that, if you're watching Always Sunny in Philadelphia and the 5 main characters are yelling at each other, or if I'm watching Blind Spot as I work out on the treadmill and on the bike, and you better believe if I had a rower, I'd be watching while I row. But they offer something, watching Blind Spot and something happens in New York, and they have to get 50 people running out of a building. It works right now. Maybe in 30 years, it will be different, and they won't need as many people, and they could just replicate these things. But right now, it's important to have the human feeling, that connection behind all the background extras, as annoying as they can be sometimes. Now, I'll tell you the stories. The only times I've been an extra were when I've had a full-time job, and that was at Bounce TV. I did it once at Bounce TV, right? But not for Bounce TV. I did it for I had to take, I remember very specifically, I had to use my PTO because it did not roll over and they did not pay you for that. So I took PTO right around November-ish. And I basically had like a day off every week until the end of the year. And I would take like a day off, and then I would apply for background work. And I think I did it. Yeah, I think I did it twice because it was on one show and another show. Yeah. And let me tell you, going from, working in post and television and having this day off, and having a paid day off, mind you, too. Wonderful. And making more money as an extra. It was, I thought it was a good idea at first. I did it once and I went, okay, this is fine. And you got the leftovers on food. Essentially, they dress you in this bad clothing. And then the second time I did it, I remember thinking, oh, I'm never coming back and doing this because this is crazy. It was so bad just to be if you depending on the size of the project, you are put into an area with all the other extras, and this one happened to be by East Lake Golf Course, and I had to park at Publix, and then they drove us to, I'm sorry, not East Lake, it was Charlie Yates. They're right next to each other. Anyway, I had to park at the Publix by Charlie Yates, and then they had passenger vans, and they picked us up, and they took us to set, obviously, which was, I think, like right down the road. But anyway, it was at that point an old folks home, I think, and not old folks home, senior retired living community. That's what it was. And then they also, so there's a church on the property too. And so they crowd everybody into the church's second building. And we were shooting in the church, very specifically. We were shooting in the church. And let me tell you, people who are background actors who want to be famous are some of the worst people in the industry you will meet, because they think that they should be on camera and they think that they should be up with the actors acting, which is not the case. I remember very specifically a guy, people would get in fights. And the 3 or 4 times that I've done this, people would get in fights. And I remember very specifically that time there was several tables down from me, because I was sitting at a table with other lone people just like sitting there. People were, these 2 guys got into an argument and they yelled at each other, and everybody, if you want to see 200 people get quiet very quickly, then that's what happened. Everybody got quiet, and then you had to, I remember like PAs coming over and being like, all right, that guy's got to go. And then 200 people watching a single guy grab his stuff and take his meal, because I remember it was lunchtime, and they're like, he's like, am I going to get paid for the day? And they're like, yeah, you're going to get paid. And then they kicked him out of the building. And that was that. But watching, a grown adult male be kicked out and people just like staring, it just, oh God, that was brutal. But that was at a church. And then the second or third time I did it, we went to this college campus, and that was for, a Lena Waithe show, I believe, on BET, I think. And we were in a gym, and we had to pretend to work out. Oh, but I wasn't in the gym. I was outside the gym. I had to walk by wearing my clothes, my gym clothes, no brand, carrying my gym bag at the time, and it had to be filled. So it was just my gym bag, walking across the green there. And then there was, so that was the second time, and I think that was when I said no more. And I can't remember. There might have been one more time, because I just wanted that sweet $75. I believe the first time I made $75, and I think the second time I made $50. You know what? And I also did, I wouldn't call it background, because I was definitely a featured person, but I was in a commercial. I was in 2 commercials. One was very local, and I don't know where the other one was. The other one was, it was here in Atlanta. The first one was in Chattanooga when I was in college, I think, and it was a very local commercial for a Chinese restaurant. And the guy, and I remember this very specifically, I had to do 2 things. I had to, one, be what's it called? A construction worker, and I had to go to like the side of a road and, pretend I'm operating a forklift and be like, oh, I'm hungry. And then go to this Chinese restaurant, this local Chinese restaurant, buffet, and pick out get food in my plate and everything. And I remember very specifically the marketing person shooting the commercial was like, you can't eat the food, so you have to put it back after the fact. So I did that. And then the other commercial was here in Atlanta. I don't remember that one at all. It was for like God, what was it? Not reusable, but like rearrangeable outdoor furniture, like wicker furniture or something like that, like stuff you could like connect and everything. I don't remember that one at all, but that one paid me very well, very handsomely. I'm talking like a couple $100 because I was featured or something, and the other ones were like $50 to $75. I don't think I was ever. That's $75 for 12 hours is roughly $8 an hour, which is just nothing. And then that's it. That's all of my on-camera work, save for the dating show that I was on years ago. But yeah, anyway, that's my story of being a background actor, and I'll never do that shit again because I'm better than that. Listen, if you like what you heard here, head to the website, cpluscomedy.com, where you can see everything I've pretty much ever done. If you want to watch a video version of the show, go to youtube.com/cpluscomedy, where you can see video versions of the other shows. Late Night Lately, the Late Night Show, and The Constitutionals, the entertainment business news show. You can also see me talk to famous people under the interviews. Subscribe to those shows wherever you get your podcasts as well for audio version. So you can watch the video version, get the audio version. Follow us on social media at @CPlusComedy on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok. Me on those platforms at Chad Black White. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.